All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating and incredibly specific document. It's an 8-point manifesto by an author named Shui Feng, and what it does is lay out a meticulous, honestly pretty rigid blueprint for building an alternative, utopian community called Life Chan Wan. Throughout history, people have constantly theorized about how to build the perfect society, right? Well, the text we're digging into today actually attempts to give us the exact rules for establishing what the author calls a peaceful and warm homeland. So let's break down the mechanics of this proposed society. The core philosophy of this whole community, it can basically be captured in just one metaphor. Fragrant flowers attract butterflies. In the text, this sets up a huge fundamental rule for how the group operates. It's all about attraction and example, not promotion and argument. They absolutely do not want to force anyone to join them. Instead, the idea is that by cultivating really outstanding personal qualities, members are just going to naturally draw people in, exactly like a flower drawing in a butterfly, simply by, well, being fragrant. To make sense of this manifesto, we've broken it down into 4 distinct pillars. 1, spiritual foundations. 2, engaging the outside world. 3, internal rules. And 4, duty and destiny. But hey, before we look at the rules themselves, we've got to define who these rules actually apply to. The text calls the individuals in this community Chanyan Celestials. And let me tell you, the expectations, they are incredibly high. A celestial is literally defined as the most refined, cultivated, reasonable, and civilized person. This homeland is made up entirely of these individuals, and they're meant to be a living, breathing model for the rest of humanity. Moving into Section 1, Spiritual Foundations, which covers points 1 and 2. So the spiritual bedrock of this homeland requires revering what they call the greatest creator, along with a really deep respect for all life and nature. But check out the wide net they cast here. They aim to deploy the love of Jesus, Buddha, Lao Tzu, and Muhammad. It's this wild synthesis of major global religious figures. In fact, they believe failing to deploy the love of these figures would actually be shameful. And to top it off, they're bound by a specific code mentioned in the text, sticking to the 800 values for new era human being. Next up, Section 2, Engaging the Outside World, looking at points 3 through 6. There's a really stark contrast here in their policy of absolute non-interference. Members are explicitly forbidden from preaching, arguing, disputing, or battling to spread their values. No way. They're also told to never disturb other religions or governments, and they won't even claim to be the only correct one. Instead, they embrace resolving conflicts purely through love, extreme patience, and this ethos of letting 100 flowers blossom and 100 schools of thought contend. The text uses this fantastic Chinese proverb to really hammer home that required patience. If someone isn't willing to accept the Life Chan Yuan values, Celestials are told to just wait. You've got to give people time to think. Accepting this way of life has to happen completely naturally, with zero external force or pressure. It's just like a ripe melon falling off its stem, or water naturally carving out a channel over time. And this deep reverence for life? It translates into some pretty extreme pacifism. The text literally states they vow to hurt nobody. Not even demons, ghosts, or evil spirits. And I mean, if they won't hurt a demon, they certainly aren't going to hurt flowers, birds, insects, or other humans. The manifesto makes it a rock-solid rule to never participate in any kind of struggle, and to never use the excuse of justice to force their will onto anyone else, even if they're provoked. All right, Section 3, Internal Rules and Relationships, covering points 7 and 8. This part reveals a very strict egalitarian structure designed specifically to stop any hierarchy, judgment, or control among peers. Inside the homeland, you have to communicate amiably, absolutely no blaming or staring at the shortcomings of others. You are expressly told not to try and be a leader because, as the text states, there is no leading or being led here. Plus, there is zero tolerance for mental, psychological, or physical harm. And here's an interesting quirk. You aren't even allowed to try and educate or instruct other members. That job belongs strictly to the guide, the author, Shu Feng. Your only job? Demonstrate goodness through your own actions. Which brings us to how the community handles intimate relationships. The manifesto states that in the homeland, sex is considered open and free. But that freedom comes with some very strict boundaries. Any form of seduction, luring, threat, harassment, or control is totally forbidden. Intimacy is viewed strictly as an advanced, beautiful dance of two souls sharing the exact same values, not just some one-sided way to release desire. Now, there's a highly specific rule when it comes to forming couples. Historical relationships, meaning those formed before you joined the community, like existing marriages or parent-child bonds, those are permitted. But forming new, stable, special, and exclusive relationships with other celestials, completely prohibited. The author argues that new, exclusive relationships damage the harmony of the homeland, and ultimately they just drag members back into the swirl of the secular world. Finally, Section 4, Personal Duty and Destiny, looking at these cosmic responsibilities. This basically acts as the economic and karmic engine of the community. The homeland provides the environment, sure, but it does not fix your worldly problems for you. The text insists that every celestial has to pay off their own debts, take the consequences for their own wrongdoings, and accumulate their own merits. Because of that, there is a zero-tolerance policy for selfishness and laziness. It's simple. If you don't give to the home, you just don't have the right to enjoy its happiness. To achieve that required level of selflessness, the text presents us with this really intriguing paradox. Quote, to be selfish, you have to be unselfish first. To be somebody, you have to be nobody first. The author presents this right up front as the ultimate secret to achieving self-fulfillment and successfully becoming a true celestial. You literally have to let go of your ego entirely if you want to gain the ultimate spiritual rewards the community promises. And the manifesto frames all of these strict rules within a much larger picture of cosmic urgency. Looking at the present, the text claims humanity is facing increasing crises in some seriously hard times ahead. So the required action is to devote yourself entirely, unselfishly, to constructing this utopian homeland. Do that, and the future reward is twofold. You provide hope to save humanity from misery, and you accumulate the spiritual capital needed to roam freely in unlimited time and space. As we wrap up this explainer, we've looked at the nuts and bolts of a community that completely rejects argument and hierarchy, demands extreme pacifism, bans new exclusive relationships, and requires absolute devotion to a collective ideal. It leaves us to impartially consider the source material. Could these 8 structural principles actually work? In a world filled with increasing crises, does this blueprint offer a viable, realistic model for building a peaceful and warm homeland for the future? It's definitely a fascinating question to ponder. Thanks for joining me, and keep questioning the blueprints of the world around you.